So welcome here. This is Ted Rao from Sociocracy for All, and I have Els here who's going to talk about a platform called Human Reef that promises to be useful for Sociocracy. So I'm going to hand over to you, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Els from Human Reef, and today I'm going to explain you what we built at Human Reef. We built the Anemone platform and what's all in it. I will start just with a little presentation to get you know us and to find out more of how and what we built. And after that, I'm going to show you the application. First, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, well, the Anemone platform is built by us, by Human Reef. Human Reef today is a team of 5 people, and we made a transformation from a consulting organization that was called Human Reef in the beginning into a software organization. And we start building the software at Q3 2018. And before we held a lot of organizations, profit, non-profit organization, bigger, smaller, different kinds, university colleges, etc., to make transformations into more flat, agile, sociocracy, holacracy, teal-inspired organization structures. And we found out that a lot of them were looking for the same things to support that transformation, and therefore we decided to build this platform. Yeah, this is not that very important. We try to help people to survive in a VUCA world. And we also find out that a lot of organizations who are trying to make transformations in that kind of organizations are at risk to fail. And the reasons for that seem to be the lack of leadership support, lack of attention to cultural change, and of course, what's important for us and what we are really working on is the inability to put people in the driver's seat of the organization. Because when you come from a hierarchical classic organizational structure and you transform it into more self-steering, self-managing organizations, people really have to be in the driver's seat and try to become there. And that's why we decided to build something that will help them. This is more sales-like talk, I would say. I don't think that's very important, because I know that you Sociocracy people already believe that's important to make a transformation to that, but some of our customer doesn't. But then we explain them that it's important to decrease retention, to be aware of employability risks, etc. And also to the fact that a lot of organizations are doing 1,000 things at the same time, but that they really need to take focus to move forward. So what is our solution? In fact, we call it an employee enablement platform from people that empower them to take the transformation from a classic job that is really fixed into empowered, role-based, team-based organizational structure. So our solution, we call it an employee enablement platform that helps people to move from jobs, fixed jobs, into a classic organization, into more role-based, empowered teams. What we are doing, that was what I was explaining before. What we are doing is bridging the gap between collaboration software like Confluence, Microsoft Teams, Slack, and so on the other side. And on the other side, you have all the classic HR systems like SAP SuccessFactors and that kind of organization, Cornerstone and Workday and so on. Those classic HR systems are still related to a classic hierarchy, and it's really hard to make a combination with a Sociocracy-like organization and this. And that's one of the things we have we've bridged. That's why we call it the bridge between the collaboration, which are teams who are really fluent in an organization, who are role-based, and on the other hand, the HRS systems that are more classic. And that's where you can find the Anemone platform between those two. Just to explain what it does, it has something to do with connection, with bringing alignment in the organization, with facilitating decision-making within an organization, or driver management, like we call it in Sociocracy, and the development of people. Let's start with the first thing, it's a connect. One thing that's really important to understand is that the software is not built for only sociocracy. You can use it in many cases, teal organizations, sociocracy, S3, holacracy, it doesn't matter, because all the words that are used in the system, you can transform it, you can translate them into words you want to use. So depending on what kind of vocabulary you're using within your organization, you can just decide what to do. The first thing in the connection has to do, this is like a little movie that shows you already some parts of the application. What we have built here is a role-based multi-level org chart. Most of you may know Hola Spirit and Glassfrog and so on. In that kind of structures, you only have one dimension in the organizational structure, but we made it into different dimensions. Why we did this? Because mostly bigger organizations, most of the time they have different kind of teams within their organization. For example, you see a blue structure here. The blue structure is a structure that is related to people who are doing the same things in the organization, like all the developers and all the sales people and all the marketing people that are really running into special domain, like the sales domain or the engineering domain and so on. But at the same time, in organizations, you also need teams that are more project-based. When you want to realize a certain driver, for example, and you need to innovate for that, you need a new team for this, you're going to create like a project team. So project team, in our software, it's a different dimension. It's another dimension, like the red structure you see here. But also like communities you can use in your organization. Those are different, those are again another level. So you can have 2 or 3 levels within 2 or 3 dimensions, we call it, in your organizations, just to find out where everyone is. And when you look for someone, I will show you later on in the application itself, when you look for someone who is working in your organization, you can see, okay, that person is working in this team, and this team, and at the same time working on this project, and at the same time it's working within this open domain or community. So that's something we build, because we also see a lot of organizations who are trying to set up more like the scaled agile framework, or the Spotify model, they often call it, where you have guilds and squads and tribes and chapters, and that's a way to deal with all this. Okay. Another part of Connect part is just like a who is who in the organization, where you can find people, again, role-based. You can look for all the people who have the same role in the organization. You can see where someone like Mario Speedwagon here is working, in which team he's working, but you can also use like skills or expertise or interest to find people. For example, in your organization, you will going to organize an event and you need someone who is a good photographer. You can put in that skill or that interest, and you can find someone who's able to do that. So it helps you to find the right people to deal with a certain situation at a certain time. That's the first part. That's the first part, is mostly to create transparency within your organization, to find the right people at the right time, to find each other. So that's the first part. The second has to do with alignment within the organization. That also is a very important part for us, because we find out that working with like Sociocracy or Holacracy and so on, people are really working very well inside their teams. The team effectiveness really boosts when you work more role-based and more self-managing. But when it becomes sometimes difficult when you have to work with 2 of that teams together to the same goal, to the same driver. And then it becomes harder in some systems to deal with it. And that's what we have been focusing on, working together on the same things in your organization in different teams. That's something we do based on roles and responsibilities, for example. You can really making roles in your teams, make it very easy. In Sociocracy, we have like the team responsibilities, the key responsibilities of a team you can collect, and the system will help you to spread those responsibilities into different roles, so you can be sure that each role is built bottom up from what a team needs at a certain moment. So like, for example, let's take a sales team. So a sales team has to take on a certain set of responsibilities. And after that, you can build your team, you can you can create roles in your team, and then you can link those roles to those responsibilities that need to be taken. So you can be sure that everyone in the team knows exactly which responsibility is taken into a certain role. So you don't have to build your roles all by yourself. Is it still clear? Okay.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay. That are the roles and the responsibilities. I'm going to show them also later on. Another important fact is the alignment itself between drivers, between sub-drivers, between initiatives or actions you are taking over different teams to work together on the same drivers, for example. That's what I come here. Another really important part in self-management is of course the decision-making within a team, and the formulation and the proposal of drivers and all that kind of things. Therefore, we also built like a governance, goal tracking, decision-making part into the system. I'm going to show you this. Here you can see an overview of all the drivers that an organization is working on, and you really have like team drivers. You can also have a personal driver, but I come to that later. You have team drivers, but you have also the organizational drivers, and you can really see which team is contributing to which driver on organizational level. Included in this, you also have the whole meeting concept, so like a governance meeting. You can, although it's not in here, it's on another presentation, but I'm going to show you. You have every step into the decision-making process. It starts with building the agenda of a certain governance meeting, for example. So everyone can contribute to that agenda, can bring tensions, for example, to the agenda, or changes to drivers, or changes to roles, or that kind of things. Then the facilitator, he or she can see what everyone has brought into the agenda. He or she can decide what will be able to take into the meeting. Then it goes to a meeting, then you have a template, and you can make all your conclusions, etc. And you can create drivers during the meeting and so on. So you have a total package of facilitation of your decision-making process, or your governance meeting, or your tactical meeting, or your retrospective meeting. It doesn't matter what you take, because you have in the system all kind of templates you can configure to make your own thing, your own meetings, and your own way of decision-making. Okay. Another thing that's important is dealing with tensions. You can put on your tensions into the system no matter when you think about one tension, and then you can decide at a certain moment to take attention to a meeting, and then to work on it, and maybe to make a proposal for a driver, for example. And then the last part, and that's more the HR part of the thing. The previous parts were more like were more based on collaborating, but now you have the personal stuff, and that is the personal drive, or the activation of the human drive, we call it. And here you can see a personal profile of someone, and you have the ability to have conversations, but also to support someone in his or her personal development based on the model of Dan Pink. I don't know if many of you are familiar with it, but the little book Drive of Dan Pink is very famous in the agile world. And we built a system to give feedback to someone based on that model, that is purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And we help people to grow into more autonomy, more mastery, and more purpose driven, or we call it ambassadorship within the organization. Here you can see it. You have really many different ways to have conversations. You can score people on their growth perspective. It's not scoring on how good are you in a certain thing, but more how are you moving forward into your personal growth. You can add personal development plans and so on. And it's important to understand that this is all role-based. So For example, we really leave behind the old traditional, old-fashioned way to have appraisal conversations with your people at the end of the year. Some manager that have been working with that person have to make an appraisal of that person. That's really hard. We make it able to do it all day long, for example, or a year long. When you have worked together with some people, you can really ask those people at that moment, what did you think about my performance? What can you advise me? Which feedback can you give me? And at the other hand, the next month you can work together with another team, and then you can ask the same thing at that other team. You can ask it to your colleagues, you can ask it to a team manager. It doesn't matter. It's really 360. You can get managers, you can make appraisals for yourself and so on. So that's the HR part of the whole story. And to make it, to bring it all together, we also have something like talent development, which make it possible for people to contribute to that kind of projects or drivers they really want to contribute. When you have at one part, you know what the person wants to do with his job and what his ambitions are as a person. And at the other hand, you know in your organization what are the important drivers you have to accomplish. We can bring them both together so they get connected with each other. So people really can contribute to the things they like to do, but are also important for the company at the same time. So that's a bit the whole story about what the system does. Okay, that's about it for the presentation. I'm going to try now to go to the software, and that's okay. Still see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's start with some settings just to make you understand how you can work with the system. First, I will start with a little overview. Here you have different tabs. You have the My Contribution tab, the Circles tab, the Organization tab, the All Circles, and then the S3 red sand. This is like the board team of a certain organization. The organization we call here is the S3 red sand organization. And here you have different kind of information. When you start the system, you get here, and here you have some shortcuts to finding what the roles are of a certain person, what organization info is important. You can help someone to find his colleagues, but you can also see, like here for Mario Speedwagon, in which teams he is working right now. But before going deeper into this, I'm going to show you the settings. Here you see like a configuration, we call it. Those are all the names that are used into the system. And here you also see some defaults. You have a default human reef setting, you have a sociocracy setting, you have an OKR setting, for example. And when you start here, for example, on sociocracy, that's what we did here for this demo, we already use the words that are common for sociocracy, like domains and circles and key responsibilities and roles and drivers and so on, action steps, meetings, personal skills, expertise. So every word you see here, you can change it, but you can always start from scratch with a certain model. So you don't have to think too much about it. That's about the words in the system. And then you also have all the meeting templates. And here you can build your own templates to make a meeting. For example, here you see the governance meeting, which is one of the most well known in the sociocracy space. But you also have something like, for example, a retrospective meeting. And when you want to build your own template, you can open it, you can give it a name, just test. And then you have a whole list of different options you have to build your template. So you can say what you want to see during the meeting. For example, you want to be able to approve a past meeting. You want to see the circle purpose. You want to be able to make announcements. You want to work on the drivers. You want to work on new roles or new role appointments. You can deal with tensions. You can add extra topics. You can even ask something like, how did you feel on a happiness poll? Or you can have some surveys. And at the end of the meeting, you also can ask for feedback, for example. So that are different kind of building blocks, you may call it, just to build your meeting structures.
Question. Can one add building blocks beyond those?
What kind of building block are you taking
Just for example, we typically do like what we sometimes call, like some groups do health checks, for examples. Some groups do what we call the admin phase of the meeting. Just curious about that. One could probably, you know, plug it into one of the others, but it's sort of terminology that.
Or you can also use extra topics. So that are topics you just want, you can decide for your own. And you also have this surveys, and those are like questions. So that are no matter which question, just you really can add some kind of topics to it. Yes. Yeah. Okay. You also have profile fields. Those are more about the people who are in the system. You can also add some fun stuff, for example, of a certain person which in a profile. This is not something to do with sociocracy, but maybe it's interesting just to know. Okay, well, let's start with the organization itself. You have a tab, your organization, and there you can put in information that can be useful for everyone within your organization just to know, like a mission and a vision, your values, your related behaviors. But you can also add no matter which section you want to do. So for example, we would like to have some principles, working principles, for example, for our organization, then you can put some principles. For example, when you want to add sociocracy principles, for example, you can add them here. So every new person who comes working in your organization can check this and knows what to do. Another part of it are the organization drivers. This is the overview of all drivers within your organizations at a certain moment, and which team are working on which driver at a certain time to contribute to an organization driver. It can be that the case. You can also add only team-only drivers. You don't need all the time to work on drivers for the whole organization, but when you want to do it, you can see an overview here. Okay. And another interesting thing are the employees. This is a list of all the employees within your organization. And here you can look for someone, Kim, for example, or you can add a filter and say, oh, I'm going to put, yeah, okay. Or you can check on a certain role or a certain expertise domain, for example. So you need someone who is able to tell me something about marketing, for example. Then he's going to show you which persons are dealing with marketing. Here it's Kim climbing tree, for example. What you also can do when you are here, you can go to the org chart. You can take this big yellow button here, but you can also go like this, and then you go to the org chart, and the system is going to show you where Kim is in the org chart in a certain level. So here you can see in a certain dimension. Here you see Kim, you see your expertise domains, but you see that Kim is working in the S3 Red Sands team, but also in the sales and marketing team, and also in the S3 ambassadors team at the same time. I'm going to reset, and you see the whole organization. Here you can see all the different domains that are already created in the system. You have the sales and marketing domain, the people domain, the engineering domain. And when I go here, you can see which roles and which people are working in the domain circle engineering. You see it's Mario and Kim and Charlie, etc. And you can switch it also into roles. Those are the people. Mario Speedwagon is NS, for example. But you can switch it into roles, and then you see in this team there are only circle members. This is not a really good example, but here, for example, in the sales and marketing, you see a circle member, you see a delegate, you see a circle facilitator, for example, but it can also be a sales representative or something like that. So every role you can put in it. So you can put on the system on a people view or on a role-based view. And here you have the different dimensions. You have we call it the domains, but you can also add something, we call it here open domains, which are, for example, some kind of project or something. An example here is an organization wanted to start working on a sociocracy base, so they needed a team to facilitate this. Well, then they created an open domain, which people in it who are contributing to the S3 implementation to the organization, for example. Okay, You can also look for someone like Charlie. Seconds. Strange. Do it this way because something went wrong. So you have Charlie Angeldos, for example, here, and you can also find his or her profile. And then you can switch from there to a certain team. Like here at Charlie Angel just is working for the engineering team. And then I could go like this. And then the system helps me to go to the right team where we are looking for. So then you come into a certain team and then you have a team dashboard, a team overview. In the managed team, in the home screen of the engineering team, you can also add things you really want to see, like the drivers, the actions teams are working on, meetings that are planned, tensions that people are dealing with at a certain time, roles and members, but also the key responsibilities. And you can add all the other sections that can be interesting in a sociocracy environment, like constraints, principles, resources, evaluation criteria, review details, etc. So that's also, again, how you can use the system and make it more complex to deal with your sociocracy environment. You have engineering, then you have drivers, the drivers that our teams are working on a certain moment. They can be related to an organization driver, but it doesn't have to be. It can one here, for example, new driver X. I can add a date to it just to know when we have to review it, and you can skip this, and then it's going to create a driver that's only for that team, so not related to a certain organization driver. And working on drivers, you can make like action steps to contribute to it. I'm going to take another team that's a bit more information. The purpose, the action, the drivers. Here you can see some drivers. So here you see an organizational driver, some people drivers, but you can also see that the team already adds some action steps they can take to be able to deal with the driver and to make it work. And you can also see some actions that are related to that driver. So also the follow-up of it, you can also do it in the system. Another important part, of course, are the members and the roles. You have the members tab where you can see which people are working in that team and which one are the owners. You can also add everyone, make everyone an owner. The difference between an owner and not an owner can plan meetings, for example, and can create new roles. A non-owner can add actions, can add action steps, etc., but not the real governance of the system. You can also create roles. And that's what I wanted to show you. You can add like a new role. I'm going to put new role. You can already assign people of the team to that role, like Kim and Peter, for example. You can also invite other people to your team to accomplish that role, for example. And you can also add an expiry date to a certain role. I'm going to put this one. So, and then you create the new role. Here you can see the new roles for Kim and Peter that are made. And then you can add responsibilities to that roles, what I explained already in the presentation. Here you can see all the key responsibilities of that team. And then you can say, okay, we just want to work with the key responsibilities, and then you can add key responsibilities to a certain person. But you can also make it more detailed and add role responsibilities. If you think the key responsibilities are too high level, we need more detail, then you can make it more detailed. Now I'm going to save, and now you're going to see that the new roles are created and the key responsibilities that are related to that roles are created in it. So when you take that matrix, you can be sure that you can see that every role already takes the key responsibilities of a certain team. Okay. Okay, let's check what we already did. So we went to the organization, showed you the overview, then you have a certain team, the management of drivers, action steps and actions. You have the members and the roles. And now I'm going to show you the tensions. I guess it's the easiest way to do that. Tensions, you can manage them at team level, but a certain person can add tensions whenever he or she is finding that there is a certain tension within the organization. And therefore, I need to start here. My contribution page is the part of a person, an individual who is working in the system is going to see his own profile. He or she can also add personal drivers or related to a team driver or not. And here you can see the personal development. You don't see any details in it already because there haven't been a conversation to make this visual, which is, you really see which role those person has and in which team that person is. You have the personal drivers, but that's what I was trying to tell you, the tensions. So everyone can add a tension at a certain moment. For example, tension, I am really curious, I'm really, I don't know, I'm really not happy with this, or I really find this or this. And then the person can add it to a certain circle. Let's take the sales and marketing circle, for example. When that person is just thinking about the tension, but is not ready already to put it into the agenda of a meeting, just to he or she just find out, okay, I really have to talk about this someday. He or she can just edit. But at a certain moment, the person can ask, okay, well, I'm really thinking about that that tension is really hard for me. I just want to find out if other people around me are thinking the same thing. And then he or she can open it at a discussion. And as soon as a discussion is opened, everyone in the team will see this and will be able to add some comments to it. Or you can also add a like to it, for example. And everyone in a team can do it. As soon as a person thinks, okay, I really feel that a lot of other people are really, they really understand my tension. So I guess it can be useful to bring the tension to a governance meeting. Then I can say it's ready to take onto a certain meeting.
Quick question just on that point. How public is that when people, I'm just wondering if there's a very contentious decision hanging that was made. How public is it when people sort of complain?
Yeah, okay. This is public for the team, only for the team, not for the whole organization, but the people, you had to allocate it to a certain team. Here, the sales and marketing team, so your colleagues of that team will see it as soon as you put it on discussion. As long as it stays on for yourself and nobody can see it. Yeah. So I'm going to show you this sales and marketing. So here you can see the tensions. Then you can see that tension here. And you can also open this and you can see that someone commented already on that tension. Yeah. So what makes it interesting as someone adds a meeting, I'm going to plan a governance meeting, for example, take a governance meeting on a certain time. The people are invited, and I can say save. And then you can start preparing the meeting. You see the people who are invited, you see where the meeting is for, you see what are the previous meetings were, and you see here. And then you see circle ambitions, those need to be drivers, roles, tensions, and extra topics. You can see, for example, here the tensions we added before. Then the facilitator will see, oh, there was a tension mentioned. I guess this tension, there's already a lot of people who reacted on it. We have to take this into our meeting. Then the facilitator can say, okay, we take this to the meeting. And it's Mario who mentioned it. I'm going to give him 5 minutes to discuss it, for example. This is, and you can also add, like here, again, agenda items. You say, okay, which driver are we going to talk about? Maybe you will have drivers that are more for the future you can't work on today, you don't have time enough. Then you can say, oh, this driver is important for today, and this driver is important for the next governance meeting. And you can say it again, yeah, you have to put on someone who is going to discuss I'm going to take someone else, who is going to discuss the driver. This is more the driver status of a driver who's already in the team. Maybe it's also interesting to talk about that new role. And Kim is going to talk about this, for example. And then you have made the preparation of the meeting. When you can also switch the time and that you will take on it. As soon as you finish, everyone in the team will get the invitation, but will also have this, what we called the leader. This is an invitation for everyone in the team to prepare the meeting for herself or himself, just to put the latest details on drivers, for example. So here you can do different drivers, and people can add comments to different drivers, can add new drivers or suggest new drivers, can add new action steps, and so on. Here you can also see the role. We have taken this role into account, so people can add comments on this too. The tensions, they're already here. You can't comment them because we have commented them before, but you know that it will be discussed about during the meeting. People can also add extra topics if they like to, like we call it, to organize team events, for example. So, and you can add some announcements. It's my anniversary, for example. Okay, and then I do finish. And everyone in the team will do that. The facilitator will be able to see it, how many people already did it and who already filled in the lead up. So you can be sure as soon as you start the meeting who is well prepared and who is not. And as soon as you start it, you can start the meeting. You get again in that screen. You can also reorganize your agenda if you would like to do so, because you see I have 50 minutes and in fact I have only 40 minutes. You have to do something. And then you go to the agenda items, and then every preparation you've seen, you're going to see here. And in every step, you can add an agreement. Like, for example, on a certain action step here, there's something that has been decided, and then you can put your agreement here. And sometimes agreements can trigger a certain action. I'm going to save it. So this is our agreement. Then you can take the agreement and you can add a driver or an action step or an action for it already.
Wow.
So that's makes us very easy to deal with it, and also very fast to, because otherwise it's really easy to make an agreement, but when you don't take action to it, it really stays on being an agreement sometimes. You can do the same thing for roles, for your tensions, when you have to say, okay, our agreement really needs to make a driver, for example. You save it again. And you can take it and you can say, okay, let's already make a driver, make a proposal for a driver already. Extra topics, you can do it, agreements, announcements. And at the end, you also can add conclusions. As soon as you finish the meeting, you can also add links to it, to documents and so on, if you would like to SharePoint documents, for example. And then you can finish, and when the meeting has finished, you can see it here, and you can open the results afterwards. You can see what have been the announcement and the discussions afterwards. So here you can see we need to make a driver and the agreement. Okay. I guess I've shown the most important parts of it. There are still some little small things, but I didn't mention, or the personal things, the personal meetings. Just like you have the meetings in a team, you can also have conversations with an employee. It works exactly the same way. You can plan a personal practice. For example, you want to have also, again, in the sales and marketing team, you have a personal talk, or you want to have a peer coaching or a check-in conversation. Let's take the personal talk because that's the biggest one. We would like to have it on a certain date again. And then you can also decide who is going to be the evaluatee or the evaluator or the feedback giver, I don't know how you call it, who to who. So it doesn't have to be the manager who has to have the conversation with the employee. You just can turn around and you can say, okay, as a manager, I would like to have some feedback from Bill. And I also want to have feedback from other peers like Kim and like Pete. And then you create it. Just for the demo to make it a bit easier to understand when you see it the first time, I'm going to take the I am the manager, Mario, of the team, and I want to have a conversation with Bill, but I also want to know what Kim and Peter are thinking about how Bill is performing at a certain moment. And you can save it, and you have the same logic as you had before. Every person who has been invited to evaluate or to be the peer, to give feedback, we call it, can start a lead up again, and everyone can put in some details. It can be something to do with ambassadorship. How are people behaving concerning the organizational values, for example. You can also add like autonomy levels. There is not a role that's already have skills. I took the wrong person, because otherwise here you have some mastery and autonomy levels. Those are the roles, and the roles have a certain level of autonomy and certain level of skill. And you can also add personal drivers. You can also say if you feel any tension you want to discuss in that meeting, or you can also put in, for example, how you feel the last couple of weeks, for example. And then you finish again. And then it starts the same way as you had in the team meetings. You also have this, and you have also, again, the different points, and then you can see what are the different peers have scored. You only see only Mario in here, but if the other peers also had added that feedback, you can make here like a final discussion or a final score to it. And the same thing is with autonomy, mastery. Personal drivers, you can add agreements on personal drivers, for example, and that's the same thing. You can see the happiness poll, etc. And that's how it works for personal. And then you can see here also an overview of the personal drivers of someone. So it's more related to the personal development of a certain person. Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess that's almost it.
I have two questions.
Okay.
One is you mentioned that one can track review dates. And now I'm wondering, is there any way, can you say more about that?
Review dates, like on roles, you mean?
Yeah, for example, but ideally we would also, I don't know if there are review dates for decisions here.
Not for decisions, but for drivers. Okay. Drivers, they have an answer, but maybe I'm going to show the example. I did it before, but maybe I was a bit too quick. When we looked at this meeting, for example, I'm going to show you this. Then you had, to plan a new governance meeting just to show you. Prepare meeting. Here you could see at a certain moment roles, prepare the agenda. The roles you can see here, that are the roles that are already, that have almost get the review date, due of the review date. So here you can see this Thursday is the review date of that role. And that's why that role comes up in the system at a certain time. And the same you can do with drivers. So when you take your drivers here, you see an overview of all drivers. When you have an end date, you have a start date, you don't have the end date, but you can add an end date here. Then you can look at it, and the end date can be the review date. And then you can see, okay, the end date is, for example, okay, it's almost near, we have to take it with us. Then you can say, we take this driver during the governance meeting. So that's how it works now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. My second question is pricing model.
Okay, pricing model. I'm going to show you the prices. You see it, the presentation?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. Well, the pricing model, this is the basic model. We make difference starting from 250 people, the price gets lower. We also have reduction fees for non-profit organizations. If they are interested, we just discuss it with them and we listen, okay, which budget do we have? And then we find a solution to work together, but those are the standard fees. We have different modules in the system. So depending on how many modules you use, you have another price. This is a yearly price per user. So this when you relate it to monthly price, because I know a lot of other software dealers are using a monthly fee. So this is €3 a month. This is €6. This is €9 a month. Yeah, per user per month, up to 200 people. And when we get up more than it, we give a reduction. Yeah.
Thank you. I am running against my time limit right now. I want to say two things well, the many things that I liked. So thank you so much for showing this to me. Is I guess um, so one tiny thing is just sort of that it seems emblematic for how well thought through this is
Mhm.
that I like that sort of the dashboard for each person is my contribution, which I just love as a frame a lot. That's very sweet.
Okay, thank you.
I love the design and sort of how it all goes together. Yeah, it looks really impressive, really good.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. It's really nice to hear. I hope we could convince some people who are looking at the video. If just want to have some details, I don't know. It's interesting to show the slide with our contact details for people who
Yes,
want
this
to
would be a good
contact
moment.
us.
Yeah, if we can pull that up, that would
This
be
one.
good. There,
Well, it's a
human reef.
Belgian number, but via email you can also contact us,
Yes,
of course.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Internet. Sweet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.